Now we're going to move on to a Q&A portion. I see we've already got 3 questions that have been asked, and so I'm going to pick people out. But of course, if you have a particular question for a particular person, please say so. This first question I'm going to direct for Thangam, which is, what would be the most important amendments that could be brought forward with regards to this bill?
Well, it's difficult to make one more important than the others. I mean, the entire bill is so vile. They're ones that I think we might, so not which the most important, the ones I think we might have the most chance of success with are ending indefinite detention and reintroducing the right to work. I think they've got some chance of success because I think quite a lot of the government side MPs are persuaded of both arguments. So I think those two are the most likely. Which are the most important? I mean, the whole thing's so dreadful that I think the entire bill ought, in theory, not to be here, but it is. So those are the two which I think we stand the most chance on.
Great, thank you. This next question I'm going to direct at Sheila of what's the key takeaway, the headline, if you like, reject the anti-refugee bill because of what? By simplifying the message to something succinct that will resonate with the public, it'll make it a lot easier to garner much needed public support.
Yes. Well, reject the anti-refugee bill because it won't work. It won't do anything it claims it's going to do. We often try and combine this message with the messages around the fact that it's going to break international law, the fact that it's cruel, but these messages only resonate with the people who are already sympathetic and interested in the really awful, in combating the really awful elements of this bill. What the messages that we're recognizing as landing with those who are kind of not quite persuaded are the messages around the fact that it will not work. It won't do what it says it's going to do. That of all 70 clauses and 5 schedules, there's really only one clause that seeks to do anything about people smuggling. So, the whole presentation of the bill as being about dismantling people smuggling networks and breaking the business model, it's entirely false, entirely false. This bill won't do what it claims to do. It will do so many more awful things than what it claims to do, but it certainly won't. It also will create a lot of problems for local authorities and for communities. This is another message that we're finding is another very simple way of presenting it that we're finding is working quite well. It is going to create huge problems for local communities who will be left to deal with the consequences of people who are going to be left to live in limbo or without security, without the ability to support themselves or look after themselves, without their family around them. That is going to have a ripple effect through communities, and local authorities will not be given the control and the authority they need in order to be able to respond to these. So it's going to create a lot of problems for local authorities and communities.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This next question I'm going to direct to Angela, which is, there are many British people who have compassion for refugees and asylum seekers, but how can we persuade at least some of those who feel defensive and hostile about immigration?
It's important to understand that no matter how people present themselves, like they're hostile or they're not interested in, helping refugees, that when they were young, they were taught to be kind, caring, and compassionate, to share their toys with each other. Now, it seems that this has been lost somewhere along the way between childhood and becoming a politician. Even politicians realize that there needs to be some compassion. They always seem to have compassion when there are major events that happen, children dying on beaches, boats capsizing, people dying in trucks. So they do have compassion. You just have to dig deep and show them that they are a compassionate person and that doing this is not going to affect them. Kindness costs nothing. Compassion costs nothing. And if you're compassionate to those people who have nothing, honestly, you have a big heart, bigger than mine.
Great, thank you so much. The next question I'm going to direct at Thangham of, are there MPs in the Conservative side, like Carolyn Noakes, who might be prepared to stand against the bill or support the amendments?
Yes, there are, but the way you support them and you winkle out more of them is you lobby them. MPs, the single most important thing for us is what our constituents think, feel, believe, want, need, experience. That's literally what we're there for. Now, that doesn't mean that every MP will vote exactly the way all of its constituents want, because, of course, all constituents don't have the same views. But if you don't let your Tory MP know, you won't be giving them what they need in order to lobby their whip. The way these things are most likely to work are that if your Tory MP knows that lots and lots of his or her constituents feel very strongly opposed to this bill, they're unlikely to vote against the entire thing, but they are more likely to go and talk to the government ministers privately in their own whips about seeing if the concessions can be made. And that's why I raised the possibility that we might not be able to block the entire bill, but we might be able to secure some decent amendments. I might be wrong. It is possible. It's always possible. Everything's always possible that there will be a mass rebellion by Tory MPs. I don't see it at the moment. What I saw, for instance, on the overseas development aid vote, which I know a lot of Tories privately said they were going to vote against the government and then didn't, is it's a government that's intent on pushing things through, and there are various ways that they can do that, and they've used a lot of them lately. So I think we just have to give them as many reasons publicly and privately to change their minds, at least on some of the key amendments. And also, you have to treat them as potential allies. No matter how you feel about your MP, it's never going to work if you automatically assume that they're going to be the enemy and you start attacking them from the start. Always assume they're going to be allies. Always give them the chance just to hear your arguments, always, because that may not work, but the opposite definitely won't work. And this is how we have to give it our best shots. It's worth it, because the lives and well-being of asylum seekers and refugees matter too much for us to get caught up in whether or not we do or don't like an individual MP. We're just going to have to, we talk to them. I talk to them. I have to talk to them all the time. They're my colleagues as well. So we're just going to have to do that.
Okay, to tack this question on as well, because I feel like it's quite related. Apart from lobbying MPs, what are the actions most likely to affect the passage of this bill? So say if you were to live in a Labour stronghold and don't feel that that's a necessarily thing to do.
I'm not sure I understood with the last bit of what you said, but other ways to attack the bill, for different organisations to act as an alliance, which I know the refugee organisations are, for individual organisations that got a specific aspect that they can highlight to use their contacts in the press, work with opposition parties, all opposition parties, but also don't stop talking to the government. For the parliamentary officers in each of the key refugee organisations, and they already do this, to make sure they're working closely with the official opposition and to help support amendments. We need that. Public protest is helpful for drawing attention, but it's not usually, it doesn't work on its own. You need all those other things as well. Now, I know that, for instance, Bambos has said that he's met with Freedom from Torture and with the Refugee Council and others, and that's really important because as an opposition, you see, the government has an entire civil service. There's a massive office block for the Home Office. It's been emptied of its good staff, but they are still way outnumber us. I mean, we each shadow front bench team will have at most 3 special advisors, and usually just one. I have one, so that's 1 or 2 special advisors versus an entire civil service. So we need your help. And that's important. It's entirely legitimate. It isn't breaking charity law, especially as you will also lobby the government, as long as you're doing that too. So continue to do that. Support and volunteer and donate. That's, to individual people. If you can support, volunteer or donate, that's also important. And make some noise on local radio. See if you can get a group of people, perhaps with someone who is now a refugee who's got their status, but who knows that they would not have done if this bill were law. I think those are really good case studies to use if people feel they're able to do that safely and appropriately. And I think that's a really good case to make. I can think of quite a few people in my own friendship group who I don't know if they feel willing to talk about this publicly, but at least one person I can think of who definitely wouldn't have made it. They would have been put in a detention camp under the terms of this bill, or something that I would call a detention camp.
Great, thank you so much. This next question I'm going to direct at Sheila of, can we show alternative ways, e.g. what is a better way of dealing with people smuggling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk about the people smuggling thing first, but I think we need to be really clear that the provisions within this bill that do seek to do anything about people smuggling will only make the situation of people smuggling worse and more dangerous. We've seen this over many years where, attempts to shut down one route has simply meant a displacement of that same movement of people to a different route and often to a more dangerous route. The smugglers adapt. They are more flexible than any state institution. They simply change the way they work in order to continue to get that income. So being very, very clear, this bill is not going to be do anything to adapt that. It's a really, really complex issue, and it's a global issue. So, the really important message here is that, we need to work together in partnership with other countries around the world that are dealing with the same issue of displacement and refugee protection. We need to work in partnership with our neighbours, like France, like other European countries. What we're seeing around kind of an increased militarization and securitization of our border, the idea of pushbacks. This is not how you work in partnership with your European neighbours in order to find a safe and sustainable solution to this. Safe routes, yes. We do need more safe routes, and resettlement is a wonderful thing, but let's be clear about this. Less than 1% of refugees around the world are resettled. It is very unlikely to be the solution that will meet the need here. We need to be more ambitious. We need to think seriously about how to deal with this issue. And I would say, really importantly, we need to think about drivers. We need to think about the things that are pushing people to take these journeys. Nobody puts themselves and their children in that much danger unless it is more dangerous for them to stay where they are. That is what our clients tell us. They would not get in those boats if those boats were not safer than what they were fleeing. So we need to understand what is driving people to move on. And I think that is something that some of the MPs that are debating the bill at the moment clearly don't get. They don't understand why people move on. And I think, changing the narrative around this, this bill is not about people smuggling. It's being presented as something that's about people smuggling. It's not. We need to talk about what's important to us, which is preserving access to protection in this country. And we need to make that message that people hear.
Thank you so much. That was great. So I'm going to direct this question at Angela. I'm fairly sure this was even in your slideshow. The use of Napier barracks during the pandemic was found to be illegal, and yet the government still plans to use that in similar places. Can this be fought in the courts?
Yes, it can be fought in the court, and it has been fought in the court. It's been found to be unlawful. People who are facing mental trauma cannot recover in those sort of environments. People who've been tortured by their governments cannot survive in those environments. Why the government thinks that that is a suitable place baffles me. At the end of the day, several court cases came forward, went to the High Court, and people were moved out of there. But I think what they're trying to do is put hurdles in place so that people are more traumatized, make it more difficult, so that people allegedly don't come here and seek asylum, because they know the first battle they're going to have is to have a safe place to be. So yes, it can be challenged, and yes, it has been won, but unfortunately, people suffer first. And secondly, it's not COVID safe. Needless to say, it's a bad idea, and the government is aware of that. So yeah, it can be fought and it can be won, but the battle is always there. It's a non-stop battle.
Thank you. I think we should wait, see if any more questions come in. If anyone's got any questions they would like to ask either other panelists, you could ask each other a question. But we can give it a few moments and see if anyone else got anything else to ask.
I think something I wanted to ask the other two speakers is about I mean, both of you have spoken about how it contradicts international law in places, that the government has misunderstood this or misunderstood that. I mean, I have to contend a different viewpoint, which is I think they know exactly what they're doing. And I think that's why it makes it very hard to fight. I don't think they've just failed to understand the nature of asylum seeking. I'm afraid to say I really genuinely don't think that. I think they know exactly what they're doing. I think they have built up a narrative around the small boats, which we may know is false. We may know that this bill isn't going to work. And I think that's why I appreciated, Sheila, what you were saying about one of the ways to maybe try and turn some of the public narrative is about pointing out that if what you want is to stop small boats from coming, this bill won't do it. I think that's, so I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, because that is part of my problem, I'm afraid, is up close and personal. I think the government ministers know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, I suspect they probably do. I mean, this isn't the only piece of legislation in which they are seeking to roll back our access to our fundamental human rights. I mean, the policing bill, what they're trying to do with the Human Rights Act, the judicial review. This is creeping authoritarianism, and we should all be very, very worried about it, because we know where it starts and we know where it ends. So, you know, I think it's still important to point it out. I think there are people who can engage with that kind of line of argument, but I don't think the government is going to fall under that one. We are taking a very long-term view of this bill. You know, it's very likely to pass. It's very likely to pass with few amendments. It is then going to get caught. The proposals within the bill are going to get caught in the courts. There's going to be endless litigation around this bill for many, many years to come. Now, that also works in the government's favour, because we all know how they feel about judicial review. We all know how they feel about activist lawyers. But yeah, I mean, we are committed to this. We will be in there, in the courts, right up against them for as long as we can and for as much as we can. Because yeah, we're in this for the long haul. And yeah, that's really all it's
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I'm seriously worried about what they're planning to do to judicial reviews, which you'll know about. So, you know, and this is my fear at the moment is I see in front of me the dismantling of the pillars of democracy with, you know, they're doing it in plain sight. They're not hiding it, because they've managed to persuade an awful lot of people that either it doesn't matter, or it's not that, or it's something else, or it's all for a good cause. You know, complete with, we'll get rid of a legally binding international agreement that we literally negotiated. Well, Boris Johnson literally negotiated the Northern Ireland Protocol and is now pretending that he didn't. And actually trying to make it about standing up to the Europeans. And I'm really worried about where this goes, in that we can rip up international agreements and just walk away from them as countries. So I'm glad you're in it for the long haul, because I fear this is going to be a long haul fight. I'm not giving up hope. I think actually there is hope, but it's going to be a long haul, in my view, not a short haul fight. And I'm glad everyone's up for it, because we will have to support each other.
Okay, we've had a quite easy question to answer. Is there a rally for refugees welcome in Bristol? Does anyone know? Who knows?
I thought Angela was going to say something. I wasn't sure. She's on mute. I don't know off the top of my head is my answer, and maybe Angela can answer. But I put the links into the chat for the 2 weeks of action that are coming up, and I would suggest you go take a look and see what you can find out. And if you can't find what you need to find, then get in touch with me or someone at Freedom from Torture, and please do, you know, we can see if we can find out for you.
Great, thank you. I know the one in London is on the 20th, but of course not everyone can attend that. Someone said, one argument that can work with less sympathetic listeners is the huge cost of detention / offshoring, etc. Would anyone like to contribute on these thoughts? Go ahead, Angela.
Honestly speaking, if you ask Australia how many millions and millions they spent putting people on offshore camps, countries, detaining them for longer than a lifetime, they will tell you it's a fortune. And if it's you that is going to have to pay for it and your taxes are going to have to increase, you'll think twice about it. Literally. I mean, currently the government is already thinking of increasing tax, just basically. If you're going to also foot the bill for an offshoring center, I don't think you're going to be very happy. So this is something you need to consider very seriously and, challenge your MPs if they're going to support this. So yeah, it's very expensive and not worth it.
Great, thank you. This next question is for Thangun. Since the government is breaching international law, is it possible to sue them in a court or in an international court?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a legislator, so that's slightly different. Yes, it's possible for a government to be sued. It's not easy. But I think, again, I want to be the hopeful one here. I normally am. I'm feeling quite gloomy about this because I've watched them just brush off being taken to court. I mean, in 2 years ago, more or less to the day, the High Court found the government to have acted in contempt of various rules on how you dissolve Parliament. I mean, they dissolved Parliament illegally. This is really frightening. However much you hate MPs, even if you don't love MPs, but lots of people don't hate them. But even if you really hate MPs, you should want to keep democracy so that you can kick them out and get some new ones. And if a government decides that it could just shut down Parliament illegally, and then when it gets told off by the courts, just go, all right, then we'll have a general election. This is really problematic. It's a government that seems to manage to slough off legal action, which is why I said we really do need to help each other and stay strong for each other, because it will be a long haul fight. In the end, there are legal remedies. As I said, I'm not a lawyer, so I wouldn't like to comment on exactly which the best ones are, but there will be smart lawyers, as I'm sure our colleagues on the call are already probably more aware than me, already working out how that could be done when this bill, if it goes through unamended. I don't know if it'll go through unamended, but I'm pretty certain it's going to go through.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can you help me counteract the pejorative use of the word woke, which I've been shocked to hear used by people I consider to be friends? That is open to anyone. If anyone wants to answer that. As a no from Angela.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to regret this. I mean, yeah, it's the culture war thing is a really fruitful platform for this government, isn't it? Look, I'm going to direct you to a very useful resource that Freedom from Torture has on our website, which is a language guide, a messaging guide, how to talk about refugees and asylum. One of the key messages in it is there is a small minority of people who will never be persuaded. They're small, but they will never shift, okay? Don't worry about them, leave them. Feel comfortable leaving them. In fact, feel comfortable alienating them. These people are not going to come to our side. We need to focus on the people in the middle who are the majority, who are persuadable, who can be moved. These are the people that we need to be talking to. And if we can avoid talking in ways that stoke the culture war, great. But equally, if it's going to annoy the people who are watching GB News or on some of those hateful talk radio programs, that's fine, because they are never going to come to our side anyway. And they are a lot of the people on the other side of that culture war. So bring it on.
Thank you. There's been some discussion about there's going to be events, a Bristol Patients Not Passports action on the October 27th. There's a hope of organising a rally in Bath. All great things that are not happening in London, so a lot more accessible for everyone on the school. And then the next question is, would it therefore not be better to integrate each and every refugee through paid/voluntary work and education, thus building and uniting communities?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, yes, I think we would all agree with that. But that's not what this bill is doing. It's taking us backwards. It's taking us from a system which is definitely already broken. And I can tell you that just looking at my caseload on my laptop here. the system is broken. I can see it when I see the look in my eye and the eyes of my caseworkers after they've had their weekly 4-hour call with the Home Office, and I've heard them say time after time after time, so again, you've got no news for me on that one, but you said you'd escalate it, you said you'd report it to your manager. What's happened about that? I've been asking you about this case for weeks now. I've seen it in the eyes and faces of my caseworkers when people that we've been fighting for to get out of Afghanistan for months, who had the legal right to be here, they were legally entitled to be here, but due to obfuscation and just downright appalling behaviour by the Home Office, they are still there. I've seen this broken system. So yes, of course, it would be better if we could if asylum seekers were given good quality accommodation, were allowed to work as quickly as possible, had their claims processed fairly and efficiently, and did not have to spend thousands of pounds on repeatedly appealing wrong decisions or trying to find whether or not their case has fallen down the back of the filing cabinet. It absolutely would, but that's not what this government wants to do. It is stoking up the anti-woke agenda. So I think I'd just chuck in to what Sheila said there. If that's what some people are throwing at you, yeah, again, I'd agree. Ignore the ones on the far extremists. You're not going to convince them anyway. But the ones in the middle, ask them what I sometimes just say, what does that mean to you? What does that term mean to you? If you're being criticised for being so-called woke, if being woke means you care about people, I mean, I genuinely don't know what it means. But if it means that you care about refugees and asylum seekers, fine, call me whatever you want. But I think most of your friends will probably at heart want to do the right thing by people who need to flee freedom, free torture and persecution. I honestly do.
Thank you so much. There's yet to be any more questions. We can maybe give it a second, see if anyone's got any last thoughts, and then we can hand back to Linda and she could say final wrap up and thank yous. But you guys have been so incredible on this talk. It's been a really interesting discussion. Thank you so much. See if we've got anyone else coming through. I think maybe not. We can hand it back to Linda.
Well, my goodness, what an evening. I mean, some amazing presentations, some incredibly helpful sort of explanations that, you know, with these documents that you get, there's pages and pages to sort of work your way through. So it's fantastic to be given kind of summaries, key points, and just you know, as I say, there's kind of key messages of what this is and isn't going to achieve as a bill, and then you know, to know that there's this whole community of people who are wanting to make a difference to make sure that this bill doesn't go through as it's planned to, or you know, at least make a noise. I think that's the thing. So fantastic to have your guidance, your thoughts. So thank you very much. So I'm hoping our audience out there are feeling as inspired as I am, and you know, have got some thoughts now, some ideas about what to do, how to take things forward. Even if it's just about talking to your friends and your sort of wider circles, you know, I guess, you know, I guess possibly most of us, our immediate friends, kind of don't need convincing, but it's trying to ripple that out a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, isn't it? So I think that's really, really important. So gosh, my head's buzzing. So yeah, as Serafina says, really just wanting to say a few thank yous. I mean, thank you to everybody who's signed up and has come along and is you know, wanting to be involved in this conversation, which is so hugely significant. You know, we mustn't let things just slip through. I think that's the one of the key messages, isn't it? And we've all got a part to play, I guess. So, you know, just by coming along tonight, you're kind of part of that. So that's fantastic. So thank you for coming. If you did want to make any donations, you know, that would be great as well. Huge thank you to the committees, the Freedom of Torture Star committees, for just getting everything organised. But absolutely echo Serafina. Thank you so much. Biggest thank you to our speakers, to Sheila, to Thangam, and Angela, not just for your participation this evening, which has been phenomenal, but actually, you know, all that you're doing to support asylum seekers and refugees to receive fair treatment through the asylum process. And you know, it's great that we've got people like you around who are willing to keep on and keep on and keep on, and don't let things drop, really. So yeah, just a huge thank you to everybody who's been involved, and thank you to everybody for coming. Well, I think that's the end. All right, so yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gosh, well done, everybody. That was fantastic. It really was. Superb speakers and good Q&A, and it went quite well. So thank you all ever so much. And the recording will be up shortly with Alison. And if I can,
Alison says, "Can I come back?"
Yeah, I'll move her back up, shall I?
I'm sorry for the hesitant start. I'd forgotten that this webinar thing, you know, I was thinking we would be inviting people in, and you know, that's why I wanted you to get started. So because it takes so long for them to arrive, I'd forgotten that it was just like it's off and then it's on, and I wasn't going to be able to see anybody. So sorry about that momentary hesitation.
went very well. So thank you all very